Order.
Debate on vote number 10, Public Enterprises Appropriation Bill.
Thank you. May I now recognize the Honorable, the Minister of Public Enterprises to the podium. Thank you. Order. Honorable members, order.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, honorable members, ladies and gentlemen. I have the honor to present the budget vote for the Department of Public Enterprises for the year 2023-2024. Around this time next year, South Africans will once again show the world our intent as a nation to unite and to choose a path that will set this country on yet another course to realize its true potential. Next year's general elections mark a critical milestone in our ongoing quest to create a just and equitable society where no one is left behind. As government, our fundamental responsibility is to create an enabling environment where the dreams of our people are not held hostage by selfish interests driven by greed, cynicism, and saboteurs involving treasonous acts on our infrastructure and pillaging state resources. Our socioeconomic transformation agenda is predicated on the urgent need to deliver on our commitment to social justice and affirm the deals enshrined in our Constitution. State-owned enterprises, we believe, play a vital role in creating and enhancing the economic and social well-being of all South Africans. This reality underpins our work to revitalize our SOEs and reclaim them from criminals and the beneficiaries of state capture, whose treasonable acts meant that Eskom cannot deliver safe and reliable electricity. The network industries, including energy and the logistics sector, are key to South Africa's ability to faster and more inclusively generate economic growth. Our people need a reliable supply of electricity, as we have all learned, to run their small businesses, light up their streets, and for their children to learn. Our people need reliable trains to work. Our miners and farmers need efficient ports that enable them to export their produce and remain competitive. There's an urgent need to overhaul our rail, ports, and logistics infrastructure in order to cut the cost of doing business, create more jobs, and boost business confidence. This is a national imperative. This task should unify all of us to work together as South Africans to shoulder the responsibility of creating a bright future for our country. The solutions of yesterday, regrettably, will not take us much further. Our world faces serious tectonic shifts that require decisive leadership, visionary execution, and a capable state to tackle our daunting triple challenges of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. The war in Europe has underlined the fragility of our world, not only in economic terms, but also in the way that global governance structures are being tested. Having just emerged from the debilitating COVID-19 pandemic, we are now confronted with supply chain disruptions, soaring food and energy prices, and the specter of more geopolitical shocks. Granted, of course, that many of these factors are out of our control, hence the importance of seizing this opportunity to fix, repurpose, realign our SOEs to deliver on our developmental and economic agenda. Therefore, reform of our SOEs, and indeed of our broader society and economy, is an absolute imperative. The NDP suggests that the significant SOEs need a clear public interest mandate and straightforward governance structures, enabling them to balance and reconcile the economic and social objectives. For the large SOEs, it says, that are involved in economic infrastructure provision, their mandate should include the imperative of financial viability and sustaining their asset base and balance sheet to maintain and expand services. Secondly, state capture and corruption have played a significant role in hollowing out and preventing our SOEs from playing their developmental role. The Zondo Commission's observations and recommendations have outlined the devastating impact of state capture and corruption. We now know that SOEs' finances and balance sheets, operations, governance, culture, and skills base have been seriously compromised and require reform. Furthermore, SOEs aim to deliver economic and social development, leading to social justice for all. South Africa is a middle-income country, and it finds itself in a middle-income trap, where it cannot transit to higher levels of economic development unless we do things differently. The SOEs must play a crucial role in helping South Africa to move to a higher level of development. We need SOEs to drive skills development and introduce the adoption of new technologies to optimize and streamline business processes as part of the fourth industrial revolution. So what is then the strategy for SOE reform? SOEs, being as central as they are to advancing the national objectives through providing economic and social infrastructure. The SOE reform process is not unique in the world. Many countries are undertaking similar processes. For example, in Malaysia, reforms to make SOEs more efficient, fit for purpose, and develop new systems of accountability in order to grow their economies has been part of their objective. They established their outfit called Khazanah some 10 to 12 years ago, starting with 5 SOEs. Today, over 100 SOEs fall under the banner of Khazanah. The president announced, on the basis of this kind of evidence, the creation of the Presidential State-Owned Enterprise Council, PSEC as we call it, in June 2020, in the midst of the COVID pandemic, to provide independent guidance and views on the dependence of SOEs, or based on the fact that the dependence of SOEs on the fiscus was no longer sustainable. The SOEs are key implementing agents of the developmental state and thus must be marshaled accordingly. There was also evidence that international best practice on the governance of SOCs or SOEs showed the importance of separating the policy function from operational and regulatory functions. Leveraging the collective balance sheets of SOEs was the lesson that was learned from elsewhere in the world. The global experience shows that the maturation of a new entity, such as one that we envisage for South Africa, takes many years. In China, for example, it took over 20 years to develop to the point where they have SASAC today. Temasek is in Singapore is the product of 30 years of work by that nation to safeguard the wealth of that nation, but also lay the basis for future generations as well. Of course, strengthening the framework governing the SOEs was a critical objective, protecting them from criminality, selfish interests, and sabotage, and finding innovative ways to manage the risk of future corruption and political and business capture was equally important. Accordingly, the following measures were proposed by PSEC arising from its work. An appropriate centralized shareholder ownership model that has been developed further, introduction of an overarching act or legislation governing SOEs, we have a draft ready, improved governance, financial control, risk management, and the infusion of requisite skills in the boards, both of the central entity and each SOE itself. That's work in progress. Having undertaken a financial analysis of over 30 other SOEs, it has made proposals which need further business analysis through experts to determine which of these should be merged and which should be considered for closing down. A deep financial analysis of Eskom was also undertaken. So what we have, honorable members, is a policy statement that clearly sets out what is the objective of this exercise, a business case for a state-owned holding company, a shareholder bill that reflects the aspirations of government and many proposals made to government itself, and to ensure a seamless transition to a state-owned holding company, we have sought in the last 4 years to inculcate a sense of urgency in the boards. We have demanded continuous review of current business models and development of financial stability plans to make SOEs financially self-reliant. Of course, in the process, we have to overcome the legacy of state capture and to improve operational effectiveness. Although it is now common knowledge, it's important to remind ourselves of the damage caused, as I referred to earlier on, by state capture, and the tough challenge in overcoming the damage inflicted on systems, plant, processes, governance, and of course, people. While much has been done to restore core operations and bring many corrupt companies and individuals to book, the deleterious effects of patronage, middlemen or middlewomen, and thieves highlights the depraved nature of those who have been entrusted with the safeguarding of the public interest and have abused it. Similarly, in the post-Zondo Commission period, we have engaged with, or the entities have engaged with many original equipment manufacturers, and particularly those that impact upon Transnet as well in recent times. Our approach to OEMs is to own up to unlawful payments made, to cooperate in addressing the wrongs of the past, to ensure that we address the irregularities, regularize the businesses of the OEMs, and ensure that the court plays its rightful role in this particular regard. No immunity from prosecution can be guaranteed, and where applicable, equipment is essential to restore full and proper operations in SOEs that is due from these OEMs. 3 weeks ago, I led a delegation comprised of Eskom and Transnet executives to explore ways to unlock some of the solutions needed by these two critical SOEs. This is still work in progress, and given the complexity of what is being dealt with, it will take a bit of time to conclude the negotiations that have commenced or recommenced. But certainly we will read, I believe, an optimistic end. Let me go through 3 areas very quickly: Eskom, Transnet, and SAA. Firstly, as far as Eskom is concerned, we now know that we have to, as a population and as the economy, settle for load shedding of a significant order until the end of the year at least. However, nonetheless, determined efforts are being made by government to ensure that the recovery of the generation capacity of Eskom must be complemented by the introduction of new capacity to end load shedding. The generation recovery plan to increase energy availability factor to 70% by the 31st of March, 2025 still remains in place. The debt relief provided by National Treasury of 254 billion rands over the next 3 years has been extremely helpful, financially speaking, and operationalization of the National Transmission Company of South Africa by November 2023 will take place. The board is expected to be announced shortly. The distribution subsidiary will be corporatized by the end of December 2023, and the process of identifying and appointing a group CEO is already underway, and within the next month or so, there should be some announcements in this regard, but this is a matter in the hands of the board at the moment. Some of the strategic initiatives we can expect from Eskom expansion and strengthening of the grid as per the transmission development plan to allow new generation capacity in the form of IPPs, gas, batteries, and other renewables to be developed. The Kuba life extension plan is underway, and replacements are due by the 31st of March 2024 of both Unit 1 and Unit 2. The Kusile units, as Minister Ramakopa reported yesterday, we hope will be in operation by the end of the year. The completion of the new build program of the remaining units at Kusile and Medupi will be on schedule, we hope as well. NERSA will issue a license to ensure that we can both trade in, but also import and export electricity as far as Eskom is concerned. The due diligence for the establishment of a generation company and a new holding company will be completed by the 31st of March 2023. So Eskom will no longer be the old Eskom as we know it by the time we get to the end of this financial year. As far as Transnet is concerned, their immediate aim is to get more locomotives into service, repair the existing trains, locomotives, and other infrastructure so that speed restrictions are removed, tackle cable theft and vandalism, and law enforcement needs to do a lot more in this particular regard. And of course, digitize the operations of Eskom and introduce new technologies that will remove the hand of the individual in many instances and avoid some of the problems that Transnet faces at the moment. The strategic initiatives are interesting and far-reaching in Transnet. The finalization of the roadmap for the future of Transnet should be completed in the next 3 months. Preparation for rail reform, particularly the establishment of the infrastructure manager within Transnet Freight Rail, will be done by October 2023, and the relaunch of slot sales by the 1st of April in the first instance of this year, and the second instance in a month or two from now. Optimization of the implementation of private partnerships, both in rail and ports, the overhaul of the freight rail infrastructure to recapture freight volumes is part of the objectives that Transnet is working towards. SAA today should be dead. Its assets should have been sold, and it should have been in liquidation. It wasn't. Through the determined effort of government, SAA has been saved, it has been restructured. Hundreds of people have retained their jobs. And as we sit today, as of the end of March 2023, SAA operates 12 destinations, 10 of which are regional and 2 are domestic. It currently has a total of 12 planes. It's stabilized its operations, and it has turned a small profit in the previous financial year as well. Although it is not unable to generate funds that will ensure its sustainability into the future. As part of its strategic initiatives, the first round of hearings or the Competition Commission process has been concluded. The second round before the Competition Tribunal will commence shortly, and it is intended that by March 2024, SAA will operate 20 destinations, 1 intercontinental, 16 regional, and 3 local. Additional routes for revenue generation that are planned include Lubumbashi, Gaborone, Maputo, Accra and Abidjan, Lagos and Abuja, Nairobi, and Sao Paulo to connect the South American continent with us. So if we look at the investment picture of all of these SOEs, which is quite an important part of the role of SOEs as well, we are forecasting that over the next 5 years, the SOEs that we mentioned will spend more than 200 billion rand on expanding and improving infrastructure. Eskom alone will spend 290 billion rands over the next 5 years, 152 billion rands in optimizing generation, and 74 billion rands to strengthen transmission. Transnet plans to spend 122 billion rands over the next 5 years. The investment is targeted mainly at rail with 84 or 85 billion rands, and the Port Authority will also see a significant 13 billion rands being spent to upgrade our ports as well. Capital will be directed mainly towards restoring the rail and port asset base of Transnet and the utilization to deliver on revenue commitments in the key commodities. Transparency and frankness with the public demands that notwithstanding the good work that has happened, there are shortcomings that we need to own up to. The illiteracy insecurity that we experience at the moment, some of the operational difficulties on the rail sector. There's more work to be done as far as red tape is concerned, both in the logistics area and in respect of the energy area. And implementation of our plans just takes too long. Renewables elsewhere in the world take a much shorter time to implement than in South Africa. And we have the opportunity to shorten much of the red tape that is required and the processes required if we have the political will and the administrative will to actually do so. Similarly, had IRP 19 been commenced 2 years ago, we would be in a better position today than we are currently at this point in time. Clearly, a new, if you like, vaccine of urgency needs to be inserted into our systems to ensure that red tape is reduced and many of the problems that we are faced with overcome over a period of time. Similarly, our commitment to the just energy transition remains in place, and both the just part and the energy transition part have detailed plans that ESCOM has developed. A special top flight manager has been implemented for this project or hired for this project. And excuse me, the implementation of some of the recommendations will commence shortly as well. The freight system, of course, is a critical component of economic competitiveness, and we will see lots of progress in this particular regard, both in the short term and in the long term as well. Critical to many of the successes, both in the transmission area and in the area of logistics, is going to be the type of creative partnerships that we can develop with the private sector. And the plans to introduce partners in the Durban Container Terminal, Pier 2, and Ngqura container terminals have registered good progress, and a decision on Pier 2 is about to be made. The acquisition of a strategic equity partner for the Durban Container Terminal is also well on its way. So similar projects are being undertaken at this point in time to ensure that this good work actually carries on. So in conclusion, Chairperson, as far as the budget of the department is concerned, expenditure for the department is expected to increase at an average annual rate of 2.9%, from 303 million to 330 million. The department's main cost driver is compensation of employees, and to ensure that the department remains within the expenditure ceiling for the compensation of employees over the MTF period, only critical vacant posts will be filled. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. May I now recognize the Honorable Dlamini?
Honorable Chairperson, Minister and Deputy Minister, honorable members, I greet you. Chairperson, the ANC supports budget vote 10 because the department's effort aimed at restructuring and reforming SOEs are aligned with the ANC's mixed economy approach. In its budget vote report, the Portfolio Committee on Public Enterprises has recommended, among others, that DPE should ensure that SOEs strike a balance between serving commercial and non-commercial mandates, thereby suggesting that SOEs should not only focus solely on improving their finances and efficiency, but also improve the standard of living for most of the population by expanding service delivery through infrastructure services that are competitively priced and accessible, and that provide an opportunity for economic participation. While there's nothing inherently wrong with SOE serving commercial and non-commercial mandates, as these mandates translate into widespread improvements in service delivery, opposition parties are less enthusiastic about the departments realizing this recommendation, especially under the leadership of the current minister, Honorable Pravin Gordhan. To this extent, the most guilty culprits are the EFF. Ironically, under the leadership of the current minister, Honorable Pravin Gordhan, the department has in effect ramped up its effort to restructure reform SOEs to ensure that the balance between commercial and non-commercial mandates is appropriately addressed. In other words, better coordinated of commercial and non-commercial mandates is the overriding objective of the restructuring and reforming initiatives of SOEs. Of course, balancing commercial and non-commercial mandates of SOEs can be a complex undertaking, particularly given that the different stakeholders champion for different restructuring and reform objectives. Nevertheless, it is fair to say that the department has made significant progress in ensuring that the entire restructuring and reforming of SOEs balance commercial and non-commercial mandates whilst reconciling the different objectives of the concerned stakeholders. To begin with, the department has embarked on a series of sequential steps to unbundle ESCOM into 3 divisions, responsible for generation, transmission, and distribution as part of effecting a comprehensive restructuring and reforming initiatives in ESCOM. The first step has been completed by establishing the National Transmission Company of South Africa, aimed at incentivizing competition in the electricity market for more efficient and reliable supply of electricity. The second step is currently underway and involves getting a license approval from NERSA, obtaining lenders' consent and on transmission debt, and appointing the board of directors for the National Transmission Company. The commercialization and operationalization of the company, which is the priority of the department, is in the current financial year, would deliver the stated goal of balancing commercial and non-commercial mandates of SOE, in part because the high level of IPPs through the National Transmission Company would promote competitive electricity market, even as the transmission network remains a natural monopoly. In turn, the competition would incentivize the complementary investment in renewable energies and in the required expansion of the transmission grid infrastructure with potential additional jobs created in the green economy on the one hand, and it would reverse ESCOM's inefficiencies and ultimately reduce monopoly electricity tariffs, which catalyze the culture of non-payment across municipality and electricity theft. The culture of non-payment and electricity theft in the main partly contributes to load shedding and energy insecurity in the country. Among other significant signs of progress, the department has successfully restructured Denel's business model from 6 to 3 core business units, namely engineering, manufacturing, maintenance, and overhaul. The restructuring and reforming of Denel's business model are ideally consistent with balancing commercial and non-commercial mandates of SOEs. For example, the 3 new business units will enable Denel to develop new products and keep up with the new technologies, and this would in turn improve local procurement policy across SOEs, as Denel's competitiveness would result in direct support of Black and women-owned SMMEs within the defense industry, especially those that have developed local capabilities to produce inputs required for the defense products manufactured by Denel. While opposition parties, in particular the EFF, may harbor doubts as to whether local procurement policy would be effective, since SOEs have struggled to use this policy to effectively dilute skewed ownership patterns in the economy and support industrial development in the past. The department seeks to correct this in the current financial year by capacitating business enhancement units to monitor and evaluate SOEs' performance in leveraging preferential procurement spend to produce goods and services from SMMEs owned by Black women, youth, and people with disabilities. In general, the objective of the restructuring and reforming of TENEL discourage soft budget constraints of SOEs that encourage dependence on state bailouts while enhancing the technical defense capabilities of TENEL that form an integral part of the Defence Forces capabilities and have contributed to South Africa's general impact on security to its geostrategic reach, as well as to ensure its technical and industrial sovereignty aimed at supporting peacekeeping missions in international and continental politics. Chairperson, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, SOE guidelines propose that the state's prime responsibility includes setting and monitoring the implementation of broad mandates and objectives for the SOEs, including financial targets, capital structure objectives, and risk tolerance levels. In South Africa, the department discharges this responsibility through the OECD's international best practice suggest should be expected from the state. For example, the department is pursuing aggressively the structuring and reforming initiatives intended to improve competition in South Africa's railway network in the current financial year. In particular, the department plans to fast-track the establishment of a competent rail infrastructure manager dedicated to the monitoring and supervision of transit freight rail sale of slots to private sector players, which is crucial for introducing competition and improving supply chain efficiency in the corridors, focusing on iron ore, manganese, coal, chrome, magnetite, auto and containers, fruits and grains, fuel and gas, which are the backbone of Transnet key industry supply chains. This is particularly important given that the South African economy is reorienting itself towards the regional and international markets, and TFR's sale of slots inextricably supports this global positioning through incentivizing investment in rail network infrastructure and expansion to take advantage of the African continental free trade area policies, while simultaneously promoting African renaissance, often in partnership with SOCs in other countries. Most importantly, the restructuring and reforming of TFR are in fact an attempt to balance commercial and non-commercial mandates of SOEs. Overall, while the TFR sale of slots catalyzes investment in the railway sector, in the rail network, it increases the share of rail bulk freight relative to the road, thereby contributing to the migration from road to rail and reducing costs of logistics, as well as that of doing business in the country. Going further, the restructuring and reforming of SAA equally strikes a balance between commercial and non-commercial mandates of SOEs. While the decision is to bring in a strategic equity partner into SAA may be done to raise the necessary working capital for national carrier in the short run, it is done to gain access to key markets through public-private partnerships to improve the connectivity of cities between countries, thus contributing to growth in tourism and local and regional level in the long run. However, the success of this restructuring and reform initiatives of SOEs hinges on the absence of political interference in the affairs of SOEs, as well as the presence of uniform governance frameworks to ensure that these initiatives achieve their intended objectives. Thus, the department plans to develop a national state enterprise bill and the SOO holding campaign aimed at ensuring that the restructuring and reforming efforts across SOEs are impervious to capture by private interest, and as was the case during the state capture, whilst at the same time introducing external expertise and greater professionalization into the oversight process related to prime shareholder responsibilities of the state. The implementation of the NSEB and SOE shareholding company aligns with the work of the Presidential SOE Council, whose stated objectives include addressing governance weaknesses and lowering probability capture of corrupt officials across key strategic SOEs. Hence, the department's budget in the governance and legal assurance unit is geared towards providing strategic secretariat support to the PSEC in the current financial year. The ANC supports the budget vote on public enterprises. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Kachalia.
We are here to address a budget and to confront an issue that has been plaguing our nation for far too long: the incompetence and negligence of the Department of Public Enterprises. This department, which was supposed to be the custodian of our state-owned companies, has instead become an accomplice in their downfall. It is with a heavy heart and fire in my words that I speak of the acts of commission and omission that have led to the destruction of the capabilities of these once thriving entities. From ESCOM through Transnet, Danel, SAA, Alisco, and the now dead SA Express, we see no green shoots, as the minister is fond of saying. And still that phrase worms its way into the lexicon of the department and its fellow travelers in committee. The department is entrusted with the responsibility to nurture and guide our state-owned companies, advise and monitor targets, but instead it has forsaken its duty and contributed to their demise. Through their gross mismanagement and lack of foresight, the DPE has turned these institutions into mere shells of their former selves. More, it has facilitated corruption. Companies that were once the pride of our nation, providing essential services and driving economic growth, now lie in ruins, bleeding taxpayers' money, while failing to deliver on their mandates. The net effect on the fiscus and our economy and on the lives of honest South Africans trying to eke out a living, minister to and educate the old and the young, does not need detailing with statistics. You know it, I know it, and the world knows it. Because of late, a day doesn't pass without globally respected media reporting on this rank failure. What has the department done to address these deep-rooted issues facing these state-owned enterprises? Nothing but empty promises and half-hearted attempts at reform. It has facilitated corruption to continue by creating an environment where funds meant for development and progress are siphoned off. A culture perpetuating impunity and disregard for accountability remains the sad output. This inaction and lack of vision has resulted in the deterioration of crucial infrastructure, electricity, rail, ports, airlines, and more. All of this while citizens and businesses sit in darkness, while we are unable to meet the export needs of our economy.
Honorable Kachalia, please, sorry for that. Member Sekojele, will you please mute? You come up again, you'll be removed from the platform. Proceed, honorable member.
All of this while we citizens and businesses sit in darkness, while we are unable to meet our export needs of our economy at our ports, and while we wait in vain to see if the albatross that is SAA will fly with its 6 aircraft waiting for manna to fall from heaven in the guise of the Katso consortium. That elusive entity which key member Gidon Novik has now left, citing issues of inadequate communication and an inability to raise funds. The department's acts of commission in focusing on inconsequential and impeding elements that stand in the way of progress, and acts of omission which speak to their failure to take decisive action to rectify the dire situation is plain. They are complicit, wittingly and unwittingly. What we demand is a complete overhaul of the system to ensure transparency, integrity, and meritocracy. We demand competent and visionary leadership that will restore these companies to their former glory and privatized as appropriate. What we don't need is the constant shooting down of whistleblowers when we should be taking action to support them. Witness the inexcusable silence from committee and the department as the chairman of ESCOM, Mpho Makwana, declares publicly that he will throw the book at former CEO Andre de Ruyter for various offenses he might have committed arising from his public statements. And if that isn't shamefully enough, Makwana's mentor and protector-in-chief, Minister Gordon, says he will encourage the board to take action against de Ruyter's violation of the confidentiality clause in his employment contract. Surely the thing should be the other way around when the entire nation is looking for answers. Surely.
Honorable Machalia, please take your seat. Why are you rising, honorable member?
No, thanks. I just want to check if Honorable Kachala can take a question.
Are you ready for the question, honorable Kachalia?
He knows I won't take it from
No,
him.
please take your seat. Yeah, proceed, honorable Kachalia.
Surely this is the time to back the brave instead of hiding behind false formalities. Alas, Makwana and Minister Gordon and the department are on the wrong side of the equation. Know this, for a minister to hold back on key information and not divulge information that would expose criminal activities and the complicity of other ministers in government is in itself a crime, possibly even treason, as mentioned by the minister himself. But let's focus on the deeply troubling practice that has infected the budgets of this department for far too long. The insidious box-ticking exercises that serve as a mere facade for progress while achieving very little in reality. For years, we have witnessed the sorry state of affairs within this department. Budgets are presented with great fanfare, promising transformative change and progress for our nation. Yet time and time again, we are left disappointed and disillusioned as these allocations become nothing more than token gestures, mere check boxes on a bureaucratic checklist. All of this while Rome burns. The department, which should be the driving force behind our state-owned companies, has instead become a symbol of stagnation and inefficiency. Its budgetary allocations, carefully crafted to give the appearance of action, have yielded very little substantive change. It would be remiss to overlook the role played by the minister who once showed promise in fixing our revenue services, but has since prioritized party interests above the welfare of the public. The once respected individual who fought for the interests of the public has succumbed to the lure of political expediency, heading a department in disarray. The people of South Africa deserve a government that is committed to genuine progress and meaningful change. We demand accountability from the Department of Public Enterprises and its minister. No longer should our budgets be reduced to mere tick-boxing exercises, serving as smoke and mirrors to distract us from a lack of substantial action. We must demand a thorough review of budgetary allocations and ensure that they align with the real needs of our nation. Let us hold the department accountable for every cent spent and demand tangible results that benefit the people. To the Minister of Public Enterprises, I implore you to remember your initial commitment to public service. Put the interests of the people above party loyalty. Rise above the temptation of political expediency and prioritize the welfare of our nation. Show true leadership and steer the department towards a path of genuine reform and progress. The time for complacency is over. We in the DA will raise our voices and demand change and condemn the box-ticking exercises that have plagued this department for far too long. Join us as we build a future where budgets are not mere illusions, but tangible instruments of progress and prosperity. I trust that has woken you up after the last two speakers, which were lackluster in the extreme. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now recognize the Honorable Mautwe. Mautwe.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Greetings to the President and the Commander-in-Chief of the EFF, who is joining us virtually. Greetings to the officials of the EFF National Chair, commissars and fighters. House Chair, the year 2023 marks 10 years since the formation of the economic emancipation movement in South Africa and the African continent. It was 10 years ago when our people responded to the clarion call on what is to be done. After a thorough and correct assessment, we realized that the post-1994 government under the ANC had weakened its capacity to provide services, drive economic growth and development. As a result, we correctly proposed the nationalization of mines, banks and other strategic sectors of the economy without compensation. We insisted on the need to build state and government capacity, which will lead to the abolishment of tenders. We called for massive protected industrial development to create millions of sustainable jobs, including the introduction of minimum wages. House Chair, we did all this because we understood that a robust development state should necessarily have the political power and technical capacity to give developmental mandates to state-owned entities. Today, we celebrate 10 years of advocating for the building of state capacity, a decade of unbroken commitment to a developmental state, 10 years of unwavering dedication to the idea of a developmental state, and definitely a 10 years of unbroken struggle for economic freedom. As we commemorate this 10 years, House Chair, since the formation of the EFF, we invite progressive businesses to join us in this celebration and contribute to the revolution. House Chair, The EFF rejects the proposed 316 million budget for the Department of Public Enterprises. We are of the belief that a department that was created to facilitate privatization of strategic owned companies under apartheid cannot drive investment, cannot drive productivity, and definitely cannot drive transformation because it is the same state-owned company that it wishes to privatize. The current confusion around the roles and responsibilities between the Minister of Public Enterprises, the Minister of Minerals and Energy, and the Minister of Electricity Tourism is a clear indication that the DPE should not exist as a department. Our firm proposal, House Chair, is that South African Airways and Transnet and the now collapsed South African Express should be under the oversight of the Department of Transport. DNEL under Defense oversight, Eskom and Alexco under the oversight of Minerals and Energy, and the South African Forestry Company, SAFCOL, under the Department of Forestry. Having one minister as the shareholder representative of government is neither sustainable nor practical. We should have multiple shareholder representatives. These are proposals, House Chair, we have been making since our arrival in Parliament in 2014, and they remain superior, by the way. Honorable members, allow me to turn to the crisis of the collapse of SOEs and electricity blackouts. Chair, it's clear that the minister was deployed to DPE to cause and fast track the collapse of state-owned entities, frustrate all of us, and then turn around and declare that the same SOEs are not working and should therefore be privatized. This tactic of privatization, driven by greed, ignores all other national interests. The minister has got no interest in the survival of Eskom. We stated in 2019 that since his appointment as the minister, he led a racist project to undermine Africans at SOEs, reinforcing the falsehood that Africans cannot manage strategic and complex entities. He appointed a person who failed to manage beverage packaging, but was expected to comprehend the complex task of managing electricity generation that runs 24 hours, 365 days a year. He repeated the same at Transnet, DNEL, SAA, and Alesco, appointing matriculants because they are white or because otherwise they are puppets. Today, House Chair, none of these entities are functional. Eskom cannot generate the required electricity to supply dependable and affordable electricity to all. We are in a permanent load shedding mode, which is killing businesses, jobs, and livelihoods. Our people wake up in the dark, go to work in the dark, and come back home to darkness. Transnet trains are not moving. Harbors are congested. Goods get stuck at the harbor for over 7 weeks. And Transnet issues a letter confirming and declaring their own inefficiencies and incompetence to the whole world. We know these are the attempts to create chaos so that they can privatize. Today, DNEL cannot deliver on its projects and fail to pay employees' salaries. Alexco is riddled with inefficiencies and corruption. And top of everything, House Chair, you have a suspended DG who tells anyone who cares to listen that the minister is corrupt. And to this day, nothing has happened to the minister. If anything, he continues with his agenda of collapsing these SOEs. We cannot support a proposed budget for the deliberate sabotage of our national and food security. Chair, we want to make it very clear today in this House that we reject the proposed budget of the DPE. We have made substantive and practical proposals to fix load shedding, repair Transnet, mend DNEL and other SOEs, but there appears to be no interest in rectifying these organizations. House Chair, our people are suffering, dear minister. Our people need jobs. Our people are hungry. The sun rises and sets with no hope of ever changing their lives. Perhaps we must take this opportunity, Minister, to remind you about the mandate of this Department of Public Enterprise, because we believe that we have abandoned the mandate, the vision and the mission of this department. Let us tell you, it is meant to create an enabling environment in which SOEs add real economic value by focusing on operational excellence, commercial viability, and fiscal prudence. This will drive developmental objectives, industrialization, job creation, and skills development. Sadly so, you have abandoned all this, Minister. You have gone astray. Instead of creating jobs, you are laying off employees. Instead of industrialization, you are privatizing. This is your legacy. You will be remembered as the Minister of Load Shedding, the Minister of Darkness. Our advice to you, Minister, is to do the honorable thing and resign with immediate effect. Our people can't take it anymore. Your continued stay in this department means another day of misery to our people. How long must our people perish?
Thank you very
How
much,
long
Honorable
after
Bauche.
poverty?
Your time is now up. Thank you.
You have failed.
Your time is up. Honorable members, there is a monitor on the left hand, on your left side of this podium. Once it becomes red, be careful, please, because the house is too small. When I say the time is up, some don't hear from there. Thank you. As we proceed, I will now invite Nkosi Buthelezi. Order, Honorable Piri.
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Solomon once said in the Holy Book, it's better to be a smart little boy than to be an old king who does not want to be shown off. I think the ANC should listen very carefully to that. House Chair, year after year, it pains us as committee members to rise before this House and debate a budget report of the department that has become synonymous with overseeing failure. This department is failing spectacularly in managing all the affairs of companies under its control, except Safcol. This is proven by the disaster these companies have become, and what they are doing is total opposite of what they were meant for. Even the report we're discussing today expressed the committee's concern about what was said by Auditor General regarding the annual performance plan of this department, that some of its targets are ambiguous and unmeasurable. Some activities are not mentioned in the annual performance plan, but only appear in the operational plan, and that some targets say to not achieve the intended outcome and have no relevance to the oversight role of the department. This department is truly becoming an utter mess, a joke, a disaster, and a total waste of public fund. With ESCOM, it's even worse. As we speak, Honorable Chair, our country is dark. Businesses are closing down and people are losing their jobs. Investors are reluctant to invest their money because the power utility is collapsing and the energy supply is not guaranteed. Let alone the despicable and catastrophic effects of load shedding, not only in our economy, but also on the lives and livelihood of our people. These SOEs, instead of creating jobs, have added masses of people on the list of unemployed. We know now, Honorable Chair, that these companies which should be working for our people, in particular ESCOM, is no longer doing that, but have become a feeding trough to those very greedy, insensitive, corrupt, and non-caring leaders from the ANC. Year after year, a bailout check must be written in this House and rubber-stamped by Parliament to approve failure. This is the problem we need to solve. As we all know, Honorable Chairperson, that if you have eaten or drunk something poisonous, you don't have to take the very same product to try and save yourself, but rather you take an antidote. So, Chair, it's simple. We know what needs to be done. The IFP reiterate, we need to rid ourselves of the rot, which is unscrupulous, compromised leaders in the ruling party. We need to elect leaders which are beyond reproach and have a strong political will to solve our problems and bring our SOEs back into work. Leaders will put SOEs back on the track, back on the trajectory of recovery and growth. South Africans must terminate their contract with the ANC. It's no longer serving their interest. Retaining the same party next year's election amounts to nothing, Chairperson, but drinking the same poison and trying to help yourselves. All South Africans who believe in goodwill, clean governance, and integrity must unite and rise against the enemy, the one so-called glorious movement of our days. At the start, Honorable Chairperson, it should begin here and now. As the IFP, we therefore reject this budget represented by the committee. We reject it as we call all South Africans to reject the ANC in the next coming elections. You have taken us for the ride for quite too long now. I think you must shape up ANC and do that which is right. We reject this budget. You see, I don't think that some of the members, even howling at this side, are very proud of themselves to be part of this mess. Because it's high time now that when we are addressing matters of the country, because we are having a vested interest in our country, some of you are simply seated there knowing nothing except to howl when we are telling you how many pimples you've got on your faces. So I think, Honorable Chairperson,
Order,
help themselves, because no one in this house,
order,
there's no
members.
one on this part of this house that will ever do that which is right and that which needs to be done. So, Honorable House Chairperson, we reject this budget with disdain.
Thank you. Honorable members, please. Some of the words I hear from there, where you are, don't go with our rules, especially the rule that is Rule 85, please. I don't want to talk to you one by one. Let's respect each other in this house. Honorable Dana, my apologies, please proceed.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Honorable House Chair, I sometimes wonder how the honorable members of the ANC can deliver their speeches with straight faces. Maar dit daar gelaat. Honorable House Chair, the vision of the Department of Public Enterprises is to create an enabling environment in which state-owned companies can add real economic value to the economy of South Africa by focusing on operational excellence, commercial viability and fiscal prudence, dis baie mooi. And the targets on the report card against which these achievements are measured include the provision of a strategic direction and oversight of the 6 SOCs under the department's purview to ensure that they are, number one, financially sustainable, adequately funded and operationally robust. And number two, they provide reliable, high quality and cost-effective services and infrastructure to industry and our citizens. Honorable Chair, if the past 5 to 10 years was an exam written by the DPE, and this was the criteria, the department would fail on each and every question. And so would Eskom, Denel, the SAA, Transnet, and Alexcor as well. Safcor might get 5 out of 10. And why is this, Honorable Chair? Why is it that every single entity that this government touches is in need of a turnaround strategy? And why has not one single turnaround strategy been successful? Is it incompetence? Is it a lack of political will? Is it corruption? Is it outdated political ideologies? Or is it E, all of the above? Is it operational excellence if we had 3,788 hours of load shedding in the year of 2022? And not even by the end of the 5th month of 2023, we've had already more than 3,000 hours of load shedding. Will this enable job creation and economic growth in line with the National Development Plan objectives? Does it qualify as operational excellence and commercial viability if an entire state-owned airline has been run into the ground despite receiving bailout after bailout after bailout, and now the department, the minister, and the entity is bailing out through a questionable so-called merger under a cloud of too many questions, such as how much is the SAA worth? Is it 14 billion? Is it 3 billion? Or is it 51 rand? What process was followed in identifying Takatsu Consortium? What criteria was used? How much is the 51% stake being sold for? What is the oversight committee's input on this? And what is the minister's role in this? And why are there so many unanswered questions? Chairperson, in 2023, in his 2023 State of the Nation address, the President set the following priorities for government for this year. Load shedding, that has subsequently worsened to stage 6 and possibly beyond. Unemployment, that is more than 40%, with youth unemployment rapidly nearing 70%, which will only worsen with this government's apartheid recipe race-based legislation. Poverty and rising cost of living, that worsens every day due to factors such as load shedding and unemployment, and crime and corruption, that is literally killing the citizens of this country. So another question that arises is why is it that when something is made a priority by this government, it automatically worsens the situation? I ask again, is it incompetence? Is it a lack of political will? Is it corruption? Is it outdated political ideologies? Or is it E, all of the above? And chairperson, it's E, all of the above. Maar moenie glo nie, hierdie regering, en is duidelik aan die kommentaar hier aan my regterkant, sal nie verantwoordelikheid vir sy eie wandade aanvaar nie. Selfs die minister van hierdie departement, van wie vele Suid-Afrikaners meer verwag het, maak homself skuldig daaraan. As dit nie Jan van Riebeeck is nie, is dit apartheid. Of dit is die Witman, of dit is White Monopoly Capital, en wonder, hierdie keer is dit André de Ruyter se skuld, maar is nooit die plunderende ANC se skuld nie. Die skurke in dasse en blink hoëhakskoene, wat sonder gewete en voorbehoud die koffers van hierdie staatsbeheerde entiteit, van elke ander staatsbeheerde entiteit, van elke departement en elke munisipaliteit in hierdie land geplunder het, tot waar Suid-Afrikaners honger en werkloos in die donker moet sit. Voorsitter, die ANC het na 30 jaar hierdie toets gepluk. Hulle het gedryf en ons sal hulle nie langer dalk nie. Ek dankie.
Dankie. The Honorable Swart will be.
Thank you,
speaking
House Chair.
on the
House Chair,
virtual platform.
Thank you, House Chair. The power crisis, besides devastating households and businesses, is eroding the nation's economic growth prospects, disrupting supply chains and stoking inflation. Public anger is growing about the government's inability to deal with this crisis. This the ACDP understands. And whilst there's been a lot of mudslinging between former CEO De Ruyter and various ministers, the average citizen just wants the load shedding to be reduced and removed totally. Load shedding is not only devastating businesses and the economy, but is having an increasing negative impact on the nation's psyche, on its citizens' mental health. The electricity minister has warned that South Africans should brace for a cold winter that may include stage 8 power cuts. Now, this is unprecedented terrain, as stage 6 load shedding means 8 to 10 hours of power cuts per day. Stage 8 would see 12 hours with blocks of 4 hours per time, possibly. Stage 9 and 10 would be even more. Government's attempts to solve the energy crisis have failed spectacularly. And I say that with full knowledge of the role that state capture and corruption played, Honourable Minister. This, however, has been confirmed by the recent full bench of the Northern Gauteng High Court that said it is clear that whatever the President and his cabinet ministers averred, the consequences of policy decisions resulted in the need for load shedding. As we know, the court found repeated breaches by the state of its constitutional and statutory duties. And we know that that judgment is being appealed against. So, Chairperson, we know that one of the ways of reducing winter load shedding will be to run the open cycle gas turbines more frequently. And that will come at an increased cost, but it is becoming unavoidable. And additional funds must be made available to purchase diesel and to save the economy and jobs. Your estimated 850,000 jobs could be lost. This in addition to 650,000 jobs lost last year. Businesses are affected by load shedding, with retailers alone estimated to be spending 500 billion rand per year to buy diesel. If all sectors are added together, it could run to billions. Is it then not immoral for the state to then benefit from taxes on the purchase of diesel, when government itself has caused this unprecedented crisis? Minister, businesses should be granted a rebate on tax on diesel. Then the ACDP believes this will go some way to save businesses, many of whom are closing as a result of load shedding. As far as Transnet is concerned, it is also, we're fully aware of the challenges there. The country is estimated to lost 50 billion in 2022 and 35 billion because of Transnet's challenges. The Minerals Council said 151 billion could be gained in additional exports, creating 40,000 jobs if all rails and port systems were run at design capacity. Chairperson, the country cannot afford to lose this benefit, and therefore the challenges need to be addressed. I thank you. Thank you.
The time is up. Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Swartz. Can we now have the Deputy Minister of Public Enterprise. Welcome, Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, the Minister, Acting Director General and officials of the department, ladies and gentlemen. Chairperson, I extend my greetings to all honorable members in this August House in the month of May, the Africa Month. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share with you the highlights of some of the state-owned enterprises as part of a budget vote 10 of the Department of Public Enterprise for 2023-2024 financial year. Let me further indicate that the challenges faced by the SOEs are structural, operational, and strategic in nature. I'm encouraged by the fact that we are beginning to see significant progress in our efforts to deliver on the vision by President Ramaphosa when he charged us to undertake far-reaching reforms that will make our SOEs more efficient, competitive, accountable, sustainable, and developmental. It is permissible and granted that the running of our SOE involves factors, both external and internal. Take, for example, COVID-19 pandemic, the climate change that is with us, the war in Europe, and the disruption of trade and supply chain due to high levels of corruption and state capture, which is documented in Zondo report. I therefore present the following key highlights on the state-owned entities as an economic enablers and job creators for economic growth for success of our country and its people. The minister has already presented on Transnet, SAA, and ESCOM, and will therefore focus on DINEL, Alexco, and then Safcol. Honorable Kachali, I thought you will say Safcol is a green shoot. As you said, there's none of them that are green shoot, and we just said all of them, and you just went on the podium and said that. Acknowledge where there's progress, acknowledge where there's been successes, and it is because this one was never captured in the state capture, because the 5 others were captured and this one was not captured. Definitely, if it was captured by corruption, we'll be saying something else. So therefore, corruption and state capture was the cause of the collapse of this particular state-owned entities. So that is why we have turnaround strategies that are here to repurpose and then restructure and ensure that they are able to do their developmental goals. So that is what is happening here now. The commitments with regard to Safcol relates to a strategy to realize the 50-50 revenue split between lock sales and processed products and a diversification of its product portfolio by entering strategic partners with the private sector. And this is not privatization when we say private sector involvement. It's far from being privatization. I know the DA wants them to be privatized. We all agree that Safcol presents a model of how SOEs must function. Climate change should also be noted. Safcol major challenge include the effects of climate change and its operations such as cyclones that continually affects its Infloma operation in Mozambique and the acquisition of more presentation. Therefore, the strategy to expand its plantation has been put in place both locally and in Africa. So it's going to be expanding to go into Africa. On its financial situation, despite a rapid increase in the cost of doing business in South Africa and a gloomy global economic outlook, Safcol maintained a stable growth in the past 3 years, where the company is the only SOEC to declare a dividend of 1 million rand to the fiscus during the 2021-2022. This performance continued in 2022-2023 financial as reflected in the lock sales of 970.8 million, which represent an achievement of 10% above target. Furthermore, the average selling price for locks for the year reached 12% mark, thus Safcol generating a total revenue of 1 billion rands. Can you clap hands for that? Kachalia, Honorable Kachalia, you can't do that. On the development of GCAL, Safcol business is key to rebuilding relationships with communities, and they continue to invest in there. For example, there's a Sugumani Youth Advisory Center, which is 100% complete now.
provides the community of Deepdale in Mpumalanga. You can go there with youth development skills. Moreover, SAFCOL has proactively succeeded in addressing classroom shortages at Etwaleni Primary School, where the children were leaning under a garage covered with plastic material and then others in the library. Go there now, you will see happiness in their faces. As I had handed over classrooms together with the board and management of SAFCOL on the 4th of May, 2023, just a few weeks ago. And therefore, there are quite a number of other activities that SAFCOL is doing. On Alexco, our commitments on Alexco related to strengthening of executive management team. Corruption did hit them. They were affected by it, and therefore we cannot undermine what had happened there. Diamonds were stolen. New houses were opened somewhere in Europe, and South Africans ought to know that why it is suffering is because of that particular incident. And therefore, we have put in a new board with 6-member interim board in January 2022, and they've ensured stability, and the executive level is now beginning to come together. The board has therefore embarked on the recruitment of the new CEO and the new CFO with the condition of this project expected the second year of this year. The revitalization of the diamond operations has grown to an output improvement of 30% since this new board came into being. 30% of compared to the 2 prior years when the COVID-19 had hit them. And also the stabilization of the finances is growing, where they are now beginning to realize favorable revenues, and mainly driven by strong global rough diamonds prices. Improving operational efficiency, however, remains key, ensuring strong financial position. Once the CEO and the CFO are there, we'll begin to see even more results coming in blue. So both Alex and SAFCOL have both made significant strides. On Dinel, I just want to also to say it was affected by the state capture and then the COVID environment from 2018, 2019, when things became to be worse. And then workers could not be paid for months, and then they had to stay home with COVID included there. They only started operation this year in March, because even the Minister of Finance, with the amount of 3.4 billion that was appropriated in the medium budget policy statement, could only be released this year. It was not released in October. It was only released the end of March. That is why workers are now back, Honorable Maote, at Dinel. Slowly coming back, machines are running. When the production has started, yes, visit the sites. You can go there as honorable members, go and do our own oversight. Don't tell the nation lies that nothing is happening. Workers have lost their job. Yes,
Chair.
they are all back in the environment, and then they are now producing. And honoring contract. People not honor.
Chairperson, I've got my hand up.
Just a moment.
You must relax.
Okay, just a moment. Honorable Mauta.
Yeah, you can have a water, Deputy Minister. I want to ask if he's prepared to take a question.
No, I'm
Honorable
not
Deputy
prepared.
Minister.
Thank you.
But I'm not asking the ANC people, I'm asking the Deputy
Not
Minister. What's the
prepared to
problem?
It's not
What's the
prepared to take a
problem?
question. Honorable
You
Mauta.
want to be Deputy Ministers?
Honorable Mauta.
You want to impress Jamnandas?
Honorable Mauta, not prepared. Continue, Honorable Deputy Minister.
And indeed, Dinel is now able to turn around and ensure that the plan is there that will ensure that it supports the Department of Defense, specifically the South African National Defense Force, in order to secure our country's strategic defense and security of supply of defense capabilities. We have stabilized at the level of the board, and then they are in the process of appointing the group CEO and the CFO, which has been vacant for over 2 years. Yes, we have lost quite a number of engineers. Out of 161, only 61 have come back. Other 100 have gone to other companies all over the world. And so we have to rebuild, restart again. And therefore, we are now quite encouraged that Dinel is also able to now to start program of Webster project with the Department of Defense. And Dinel is refuting the assertions in the media that are not true. Contrary to what they said, that Hofhester is in jeopardy. No, the negotiations have been completed, and the Minister of Defense will be announcing that the contract will continue under obviously different objectives and conditions. And as earlier alluded, the Dinel is rationalizing from 6 to 4 to manage the cost, but we are also engaging with the organized labor to ensure therefore that we are able then to respond to this issue of the restructuring. And Dinel sells to 13 countries through the permission of the National Convention on Arms Control Committee. And currently we are selling to 13 countries. Russia is not one of them because we are regulated in who to sell to. So Chair, let me then go towards my conclusion because of time, Lorna, to say that people will not forget. I just want to quote Maya Angelou when he says that people will not forget what you said, will forget what you say. People will forget what you do, but people will never forget how you made them feel. The African National Congress is here to make people of South Africa feel good. Yes, albeit challenges, and which are doing very well that we resolve the satisfaction of the people. We therefore say we support this budget to allow the department to deliver on its oversight.
Thank you.
And the African
Deputy
National
Minister.
Congress will definitely continue to do so. Thank you.
Deputy Minister, time is out. Thank you. Honorable Nkwankwa, who is on the virtual platform.
Thank you, House Chair. Local Minister uthi the African National Congress government yenza abantu bazive good. Ngulo rhulumente lo sithe sisakumse court sathi makubekho umbane ezibhedlele kuba abantwana nabantu bayabhubha abadinga oxygen xa ku-load shedding. Ngulo rhulumente lo sithe xa sisithi kwii-police stations ezifana naseSamora ezilokishini nangakumbi that don't have backup generators, amapolisa ayatshixa ngaphandle oyike ukuthi kungangeni bantu nge-load shedding bangaphumi ezilokishini. Ngulo rhulumente lo kuthiwa ufuna abantu bafile good obangela ukuthi aphile icase athi akafuni ukuba kubekho umbane ezikolweni ukuze abantwana bethu bakwazi ukufumana izinga lemfundo elisemgangathweni. Kufuneka abantu baseMzantsi Afrika bayazi ukuthi xa kuthiwa lo rhulumente uthi abantu bakuthi mabafile good uthetha ntoni. Ngulo rhulumente lubangela ukuthi iindawo ezifana umzekelo neDurban South Beach CBD zingabi nambane ukusukela izolo ngentsimbi 10 kusasa uzobuya umbane ngentsimbi 7 namhlanje, nearly 24 hours later. Kungekho ngcaciso ukuthi whether it's load shedding or it's a technical fault or it's a problem. Kulo rhulumente ka Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa obangela ukuthi rhoqo kusoloko kuhlelwe nje kunikwa imali as SOEs. Kulula ukubhaila out SOEs kuba kutya amaqabane. Kodwa yona nto inzima into yoba i-municipal debt inyuke up to more than 50 billion rands. While kulula ukubhaila out as SOEs, most of which are useless kuba kutyiwa kuzo imali, akululanga kulo rhulumente ukulungisela ukukhawulelana nemicimbi yoomasipala abantu bakuthi abahluphekileyo ezilalini abangakwaziyo ukumelana neenkonzo zabantu kuba abanamali bangoomasipala abahluphekileyo kwaye ababeki bantu abakwaziyo ukulawula ngendlela engqingqwa nenengqondo. Isekwa ngulo rhulumente we-ANC ebethe kwi-State of the Nation address in February uzawukwazi ukuyilungisa i-load shedding. 3 months later, load shedding has taken a turn for the worse. In fact, siya ku-stage 10, 12, 14, I don't know, probably a complete blackout if you consider the poor leadership yalo rhulumente kule issue ye-load shedding. Ibe ndihleli noosomashishini ababekhalaza besithi kufikelele kwixesha lokuba ngoku basebenze iiyure ezine 4 hours ngemini ngenxa yesi stage esitsha esibangela ukuthi kufuneka baphelelise abantu ngomsebenzi banqumamise abanye ze baphinde abantu bathi ngoba enqunyisiwe bedendiwe babuye bathi balambile abananto ukutya. Kufuneka babondle kuba lo rhulumente akanandlela yokuyenza loo nto. Bebuza ukuthi kutheni nale nto ukuthi kungazanywa ukuthi kuminimizwe i-load shedding during the most productive hours ze-country.
Time is up.
Hayi nenza ngabom Marcel.
Okay. The next speaker is Honorable Imam Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. While we in South Africa experience load shedding for 2, 4, and 6 hours a day, people of Palestine have no electricity for most of the day, deprived and discontinued by the apartheid Israeli government who deliberately withholds electricity or energy supply to the Palestinian people. And yet there are people in this very house that will support the atrocities that are committed by the Israeli government. Now, let me at the outset say that the National Freedom Party will support this budget vote. Not that we are entirely happy and satisfied with what is going on. Chairperson or minister, I had a chat with the Minister of Finance the other day. And according to him, there's not one state-owned company that is providing any revenue to the fiscus. This is how bad the situation is. On the issue of ESCOM, I think we are quite satisfied and convinced that this problem will take the best part of 9 to 10 years to sort out. Any indication that we'll have uninterrupted supply of energy in the 1 or 2 years from today is just a pipe dream. It's clearly not going to happen. What we need in South Africa is to build more coal-fired power stations and also concurrently put in more, deal with renewable energy. China is building almost two every week at this point in time, coal-fired power stations. And I'm not sure why we in such a hurry to move from one extreme to the other. On the issue, yes, indeed, there is climate change, but your people will die with no food. The businesses are closing. People have got no electricity. Your water is being affected, so you might die even without that. So we have a problem. Yes, I agree with you. But I think we can ensure, and I think Minister of Energy has made it very clear, you need a base load when it comes to coal. And that's what all other countries are doing. The United States say to you they'll get rid of it in 2054, but we are in a hurry to get rid of it in a month. Where's the common sense in that? I don't understand. On the issue of SAA, through you, Chairperson Minister, we still have not received an explanation why was an entire fleet of SAA, which we were told were freehold, was sold by this Coleman Andrews to his own company and then released again to SAA. To date, we've never received an explanation. We'd love to know exactly what is going on there. Another thing I want to say, Minister, Denel is the pride and joy of this country. Let's save Denel at any cost. Denel had a reputation next to none internationally in arms and ammunition. Look at who is benefiting today. The United States arms turnover was 7-fold more last year than any other country in the world. So, while we're supporting this, we believe a lot of work needs to be done.
Honorable,
But I think a private
Honorable
partnership
Shaggy,
will
ma'am.
work. Thank you
Time
very much.
is up.
NFP supports this budget vote.
okay. The next speaker is Honorable Piri.
Ke a leboga modulasetulo. Ke thome ka go tsamaiša baetapele ba lekgotla la badimo le batho, lekgotla la African National Congress, lekgotla leo le etilweng pele ke batho ba tlhogo tša go tšea gabotse, ba e leng gore ba tseba gore setšhaba sa Afrika Borwa se ba tshepile. Ke tamiše ministera wa rena Ntate Godana, ke tamiše deputy ya rena, ke tamiše ya dutšeng mabutsung a chairperson le committee ka moka ga mmo le ba magoro ga maganetše. Ke a le tamiša maoto. Modulasetulo, the ANC support budget vote 10 because the work to be undertaken by the Department of Public Enterprise in 2023 financial year 2024 to improve government at our state-owned enterprises is critical for development trajectory of our country. We are all aware of the state most of our SOEs were in at the start of this sixth parliament, which is necessitated the need to restructure, of course, and reform them. Of course, the opposition parties will advocate for privatization of SOEs, but when we run correctly, the SOEs are driven of any country's economic development, with recent examples like your China, Malaysia, and others. We support the decision of the cabinet to establish an SOEs holding company. This will go a long way in standardizing the government's arrangement within the SOEs and their professionalization. This work must entail creating a system for the selection and appointment of boards, their remuneration and performance evaluation. This system must be anchored on the principles of fostering transparency, workload balance, and accountability. This system must also read our SOEs boards for career boards members who apply for boards membership irrespective of their lack of knowledge of specific sector. In addition, the SOE holding company will also standardize the remuneration system of executives of the SOEs. Without an effective incentive system, we will not win the fight against corruption within the SOEs, as management will continue to abuse the procurement within the entities for kickbacks. This will also assist in dealing with the scourge of greed in the remuneration of some of these executives. In the last 4 financial years, the DPE has designed a clear incentive system and injected professionalism to boost the appointment of credible, objective, and skilled board members and executive management, so as to protect and enhance the national interest of South Africa through the SOEs. This is in line with the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development released SOEs guideline that proposed the state prime responsibility as established as a clear remuneration policy for SOEs boards that fosters the long and medium-term interest of the enterprise, and it can attract and motivate qualified professionals. Honorable members, the department under the stalwartship of Minister Honorable Pravin Gordhan, the minister who was appointed by the president, has stated to give effect of the professionalism when he appoints the board and executive management of Transnet. The team brought in a blend of knowledge, skills, objective, experience, and commitment to the SOE. The board and executive management are pursuing the growth and renewal strategy premised on private sector participation model as a restructuring and reforming tool, which has over time will enable Transnet to address most historical barriers to entry for new participants in ports, rails, pipelines, and businesses where Mautre was working. And this is the legacy that was left by Mautre. The growth and renewal strategy implements the Department of Transport National Rails policy and aimed at achieving most others. Amongst others, improved efficiency, service quality, and competition of the rail business through the introduction of the third-party access across the various categories of rail line in the country. The attraction and crowding private sector investment into the rail sector through the provision of policy certainty and recommending the development of the PSP framework to guide participation across different corridors. Honorable House Chair, while the recent flood in KZN might have slowed down the implementation of this strategy, evidence on the ground indicate that this strategy has already incentivized private sector participation in rail network, with Tracton Rail as the first privately owned train operating company operating the Cape Corridor between Kronstadt and East London. Furthermore, the board and the executive are taking action that fully aligned with the ANC-led government overall objective of eradicating corruption and crime. In particular, they are supporting and partnering with law enforcement agency and private security industry to address cable theft and vandalism of the freight rail network through the use of advanced technologies and additional security personnel. In this regard, we eagerly awaiting the department completion of the 4th quarter progress report on interventions to reduce loss of SOEs infrastructure through theft and vandalism. Similarly, the department recently appointed a new board at ESCOM
led by a capable chairperson with skills and competent personnel from the Engineering Council of South Africa through the State Capture Task Team, which work collaboratively with the National Prosecuting Authority and the Special Investigating Unit. The board is proactively implementing the recommendation of the Commission of Inquiry into state capture. Just to illustrate, this task team has made serious progress to recover unlawful payment of over 3.1 billion from Mixi and countless other services provider through collaborative partnership with NPA and SIU. Additionally, ESCOM is currently pursuing approximately 4.8 billion through civil aviation against its former executive and directors that were the brain and heart of state capture. This is done to collaborate with the SIU and South African Police Services. Furthermore, ESCOM board is vigorously driving the planned performance recovery plan to improve the lives of our people and recovery of Midupi, Kendal, Matla, Majuba, Duva, Tutuka, and Kusile power station, and ultimately reach the desirable energy available fact. And the department is closely monitoring this in current financial year in the hope of increasing the EAF above 65% by 2024. Of course, House Chair, opposition parties like your DA, Freedom Front Plus, as well as, you know, the false vanguard, in Venda we called them Mafashaula, like your EFF, the UDM, the IFP, and the ACDP, these Mafashaulas, they treat ESCOM like supermarket. That is, they take what they like and leave what they don't like in their own time, and they think these utilities are treated like a supermarket. As expected, opposition parties lament that.
No.
Speaker,
No.
can you? As expected, opposition parties lament that the precinct of load shedding and the harmfulness effective thereof indicate that ESCOM board is insufficient in the task of security of supply of electricity. Thus, the department incentive system and imperative of professionalism have not yet yielded gains and achievement, while potential mechanism of overcoming load shedding are inescapable demands for the citizen. This requires a collaborative effort. We must work together. We must support the board in ensuring that the ESCOM not only supply electricity to the nation, but ensure that the electricity is affordable. ESCOM will continue to support the task assigned to the Minister of Electricity, ensuring that we urgently end load shedding. Other gains and achievement of the department incentive system imperative of professionalism include the appointment of business heavyweights and experts of part of DINEL group board tasked with the responsibility to implement SOE turnaround strategy. As it stands, the board has appointed the chief restructuring officer to lead turnaround incentive to achieve, amongst others, the repositioning of the SOEs for sustainability, as well as the restructuring of the SOEs to reduce the cost base. With regard to Alesco, the interim board appointed is taking assertive action to accelerate turnaround strategy of the SOE diamond mining operating, while the department conduct comprehensive study to determine the appropriate shareholding structure for it, while lack of capital act as a stumbling block to an effective implementation of Alexo turnaround strategy. The interim board nevertheless commit to identify the procurement services from large mining contract with the financial and technical capabilities to undertake the large-scale mining operating.
Time is up.
Honorable House Chair, the ANC support the budget vote.
Time is up. Honorable Isaac. Honorable Isaac. Okay, honorable members, Honorable Isaac. No, honorable members. Let's give him his time. Can you welcome Honorable Isaac?
Thank you, Chairperson. Fellow South Africans, the ANC's 331 billion rand swindle is theft from the people of South Africa. Now digest this. Chairperson, in 1999, this ANC government established the Department of Public Enterprises, supposedly to accelerate the restructuring, the professionalization, good governance, and of course, management of state-owned enterprises. 24 years later, some 24 years later, none of these aspirations have been attained. Instead, the country is saddled with highly indebted SOEs that are completely dysfunctional and have become cesspools of corruption for connected cadres and cartels. After spending 331 billion rand out of these monuments of corruption since 2013, the South African taxpayer has literally been forced in the dark as Eskom has all but collapsed. Exporters are failing to get their goods to ports due to a floundering Transnet. Denel is always knocking at Treasury's door, asking for more bailouts. And of course, SAA, Honorable Minister, well, the less said about this doddering entity, the better. Such is the destruction and mayhem that the failing ANC government has brought to SOEs. They should all hang their heads in shame for ruining the promise that this beautiful country once upon a time had. Honorable Chairperson, everyone knows that Eskom has been hollowed out by cartels and corrupt politicians. But here is the cold, hard truth. In the short term, South Africa needs every megawatt that we can squeeze out of this struggling coal power plants. But this will not be possible if the ANC government keeps on insisting on racial bean counting, which has limited Eskom's ability to hire retired and experienced engineers who have offered to assist with the running of these old power plants. Eskom is suffering from a lack of skills, which is evident in the repetitive breakdowns and low quality of the maintenance being undertaken, affecting the performance of the generation units, and of course, thus leading to high levels of load shedding. The warning by Eskom that the country faces the risk of stage 8 load shedding during this winter, while hardly surprising, will be devastating for our economy, which of course, as most of you know, is already in ICU. At Denel, ma'am, please listen up. Gross mismanagement, declining competitiveness, and a local defense industry in decline have all combined to render the entity a shadow of its former self. Denel suffers from a high fixed cost and an outdated operating model, Minister, an outdated operating model, which requires large amounts of initial capital investment before profits can be realized. Due to Denel's redundant model, the company has failed to capitalize on a potential order book of some 8 billion rand, severely compromising its ability to hold on to clients that it had built a relationship with over the years. The loss of Denel's export market share will be, of course, a death knell for the company due to the shrinking local defense market. The fall of Denel's revenue from a high of 8.2 billion rand in 2015-16 to below 2 billion rand in 21-22 has been precipitated by the declining South African defense spend, budget spend in relation to the gross domestic product. If the recent report by Treasury on Defense's terrible financial state is anything to go by, Denel's prospect for local orders are decreasing by the day. Chairperson, the grim outlook for SOEs is symptomatic of the general malice that has infested our national economy as the result of the ANC's disastrous policies. Alex Core is still a problem child, ma'am, in the cacophony of struggling SOEs, as it continues to ask for more bailouts. The impoverished Richtersveld community in the Northern Cape has still not benefited from the successful land claim. Minister, you will again come up here to the podium and give assurances that your department's turnaround strategies are on course. It is a line that the ANC Government itself loves to band about whenever they are called upon to account on failing SOEs. South Africa has now had enough, but enough of this rhetoric. In conclusion, Honorable Chairperson, the ANC's 331 billion SOE swindle was theft from taxpayers, and the South Africans will return the
is up,
favor when they
honourable
kick them
member.
out in
Honourable
2024
member.
elections.
Time is
I
up.
thank you.
Okay. Honorable Jason Kwanazi. Honorable Jason Kwanazi, welcome.
Honorable House Chairperson, Minister, the Deputy Minister, the Portfolio Committee on Public Health, of our Portfolio Committee, Ubaba Ukaya Magaxa, we wish him a speedy recovery. Honorable members, South Africans, Sanbonan, Chairperson, we must formally critique and as well as honestly evaluate and assess the work of the Department of Public Enterprise as public representatives so that it can know which areas and strength to strengthen and which areas to improve. However, the critique, evaluation and assessment of the DPE's work must be informed by a logic mind rather than the feeling of resentment and rage towards the minister and the African National Congress. Moreover, Honorable House Chair, the critique, evaluation and assessment of the DPE's work must not narrow focus on exposing inefficient and inconsistent, often done through condemnation and mockery without considering the Department of Public Enterprise positive role. At the same time, Honorable Chairperson, the critique, evaluation and assessment of the DP of the department's work must equally not driven by the desire to humiliate and disagree, if you disagree with that, honorable member. Of course, Honorable Chairperson, I'm not trying to intimidate honorable members by insinuating that if you don't have anything nice to say about the department, you better not say anything at all. The point I'm driving home, Honorable Chairperson, if you can listen. It's sometimes disappointing to receive the submission of the opposition parties on critique, evaluation and assessment on the department's work that reflects the type of simplicity thinking that the lecture discouraged undergraduate students from adopting. Honorable Chairperson, for instance, the opposition parties with statistic underpinning such as the EFF arguing that the restructuring of SOEs under the portfolio is a precursor to privatization, implementing that the DPE is not immune to class relations as it sells SOEs to great capitalists. While avoiding the EFF argument altogether is to turn a blind eye, it is nevertheless misleading in terms of comprehending the nature of restructuring and turnaround a plan of SOEs proposed by the DPE in line with the recommendations of the Presidential State-Owned Enterprise Council. In particular, the restructuring turnaround plan of SOEs are informed by the African National Congress-led government, which is in power currently, mixed economy approach, whereas inclusive economic development is not purely private sector process, but a joint process between the public and private sectors, which with the state playing a leading role. Most importantly, Chair, the restructuring and turnaround plans are aimed at recreating efficient and competitive markets, which can provide high quality and varied status services at lower cost and to end users. For illustration, Chairperson, siyasebenza, we are a government at work and siqhuba kangangoko. For illustration, listen. For illustration, the restructuring of SAA has benefited customers for so far in sense of that the resumption of SAA operations improve the supply side and in South African Airlines market following the existing of ComAir Group, in particular Kulula.com and British Airways. To be clearer, the resumption of SAA's operation prevented the South African Airlines market from becoming a candidate for excessive pricing by making possible for customers flying between Johannesburg and Cape Town to switch airlines in response to price increase after ComA Group decided to suspend flights indefinitely. In short, Honorable Chairperson, the resumption of SAA operations has not only brought about significant improvement in the quantity and quality of services provided by the South African airline, but it also triggered competition that delivered flight price reduction for customers, therefore enabled them to save money in the middle of the rising inflation and cost of living. The case, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Minister of SAA, warns us about the opposition party critic evaluation and assessment of the department's work, whose intended objectively is to blind us to the major gains and achievement that the restructuring and turnaround plans of SOEs has brought about economy, thanks to the leadership of the African National Congress, His Excellency, the President, the Minister, Honorable Minister and his competent team. Another illustration that the restructuring and turnaround plans are aimed at returning SOEs to the ambit of citizen consent is the case of ESCOM. While critiquing ESCOM for being inefficient in the task of supplying electricity without interruption, it is fundamental, Honorable Chairperson, to an open and democratic society. We need to look at the issues of load shedding in the context and take two factors largely ignored by the opposition parties in consideration. The first instance, Honorable Chair, the US-dominated debt incurred while building the much-needed Kusile and Medupi power station exposed ESCOM to a current mismatch between economy-generating activities and debt servicing costs by the exchange rate volatility. As a result, ESCOM investment in generation capacity has declined because the revenues raised from sale volume were not adequate to cover both debt services cost and investment projects. Consequently, Chair, maintenance activities were often cut back to cover debt servicing cost in the turn to quality of service to the existing customers was compromised. Honorable Chairperson, while the National Treasury has agreed to take the debt of ESCOM to give the utility space to invest the expansion of the transition grid and in reliability maintenance across its coal field, addressing the backlog of maintenance is desirable, but politically impossible to achieve within one electoral cycle year. As much the root cause of load shedding are not one dimension as opposition parties would like to believe. Secondly, Chair, the trade-off between supplying electricity and affordable prices and ensuring all costs are covered and sufficient return are made on investment is non-existing in South African electricity markets. Honorable Chairperson, electricity tariff has been kept too low to accelerate affordability access to electricity, whereas poor households can afford to purchase the electricity that are connected to. And this has been done in manner that does not balance the need to secure ESCOM financial position while protecting poor households and small business against the rising tariff, electricity tariff. Consequently, Honorable Chairperson, prolonged lower electricity tariff has resulted in the deadweight loss, where ESCOM struggled to supply electricity in the social optimal level due to the tariff methodology, which does not cover the cost of generation electricity. As opposition parties' critique of ESCOM is descriptive, incomplete, short-sighted, and suffers from selective bias. In short, opposition has not evaluated and assessed evidence before attributing load shedding to the DPE. The two factors, Honorable Chairperson, are largely ignored by the opposition party that has just discussed at a great length, suggest that ESCOM, to address the issue of load shedding, restructuring, turnaround plans must be implemented. Hence, the DPE is driving the unbundling of ESCOM to foster fair pricing to ensure full cost recovery while also promoting competing and protecting poor households against monopoly practice in the electricity market. Honorable Chairperson, of course, the EFF critical of unbundling of ESCOM and declared that it must not be pursued as if it's likely to be used as a tool of white monopoly capital to exploit state assets. By being critical, Honorable Chair, does not mean finding faults, but rather implies assessing unforceable evidence and making reasonable conclusion. And as expected, the EFF has not demonstrated how, when, and why the unbundling of ESCOM will capitalize capture by the monopoly capital. As such as the opposition parties who are esteemed disguised as the revolutionary thoughts grounded in the deep insecurity of white people must not be allowed must not allow the unbundling of ESCOM to be in reverse rather than forward. Siyaqhuba siyaphambili, Honorable Chairperson. Given that only good is in creating a climate of fear in population and drives the country forward, we remain focused, Honorable Chairperson, to deliver the affordable, accessible electricity and will not be disturbed by loud hailers and marshals. Chairperson, the attitude towards load shedding by the opposition parties ought to find a school that solution of load shedding can be fighted in court of law. Of course, the UDM and the IFP decision to use the code of law to compel the department to exempt public services institutions such as school, hospital, clinics, and police station from load shedding was done for the sake nothing but ukubukwa spectacle. Exempting public service institution from load shedding involves high risk of permanent grid collapse, damage grid. Unfortunately, when ESCOM grid collapsed due to the exemption demand, the same opposition parties will run to the ANC-led government to demand immediate solution. We have to be clear. We are in the year of decisive action to advance people's interest. The African National Congress will boldly mobilize social parties around the economy reconstruction and recover in order to increase job creation, investment, improve delivery in the basic services and maintenance infrastructure, strengthen and fight corruption in our SOEs. Will deliver and implement the mandate as given to us by the majority of South Africans. We remain focused. We are the government of work at work. ANC supports the budget. Mandla.
Just on time. Just on time. The Honorable Minister. Let's welcome the Honorable Minister. They were not so generous, Honorable Minister. They left nothing for you except 5 minutes. 5 minutes. 7, eh?
Yeah. So Chairperson, thank you for adjusting from 5 to 7. It's very clear, as the Honorable Mkonazi was suggesting, that facts and politicking are really poor bedfellows. Because the one thing that, whilst you want the ANC and the DPE to confess inverted commas to all sorts of things, if there was an examiner in this room to examine your election speeches, you would have failed absolutely miserably as a collective. Secondly, the shocking thing about all the presentations here is the collective amnesia that you demonstrate for the South African public. Zondo didn't take place.
Keep it low, keep it low. Honorable members, keep it low.
None of you captured municipalities or municipal entities. None of you were part of coalitions in various metros. None of you are responsible for tenders being allocated in different places. If you really want to talk facts, let's talk about them. And that happened on the DA's watch in many of these institutions. And hopefully there will be a similar Zondo Commission one day to discuss and to expose the role of the DA, the IFP, the UDM, and the EFF in the way in which municipal tenders were shared. just like the way the book was paid for.
Or keep it low,
So,
honorable
Chairperson-
members. At least we can regulate, but keep it low, not that high, please.
Yeah, the truth, Chairperson, is very difficult to face. But of course, we live in a period of fake news and all sorts of cooked up stories. So it's not surprising at all. But let me remind you, it was an ANC member in 2017 of the Public Enterprises Committee who initiated the Eskom inquiry. But you think that a certain CEO is the first person to talk about corruption in Eskom? It's well recorded. The question isn't how much more you want to expose it. The question is, how do you want to correct it? And that is what this government is about. Of course, honorable.
No, to be fair, honorable members, please don't drown the speaker. As a belief.
Chairperson, theatrics and facts also are strange bedfellows. They don't get together. So you can have all sorts of verbiage on this platform, but no facts at all to back up any suggestion whatsoever. No solutions provided. There's load shedding, but what do we actually do about it? If one looks at Nkosi Buthelezi, if we look at Nkosi Buthelezi, he comes from KwaZulu-Natal. The key railway line that takes coal to Richards Bay cuts through the province that he and I come from. What has he mobilized to make sure that communities don't disrupt the rail operations of that particular community? Nothing. Nobody has shared with us a vision for SOEs. No.
Sorry, Minister.
Yes,
Honorable
sure.
Minister. A minute. Honorable Buthelezi.
Thank you, Chair. May I kindly ask for a point of privilege and address you for a moment?
There's no privilege. No privilege granted, nothing like that. Honorable Minister.
Why?
So the only solution we have coming from Opposition Incorporated is privatize, or on the other hand, nationalize, so that more plundering can actually take place. And the day anybody can
Honorable
show-
members, you're too active, but keep it low, please. Yeah, no, keep it low. No,
Oh,
no
yes,
problem.
I'm angry too.
Keep it low, keep it low.
So, Honorable Chairperson, instead of talking about Jan van Riebeck, in some instances, we actually need to talk about Rip van Winkle, because we seem to have forgotten or actually stepped through a revolution. Jan van Riebeck is the symbol of colonialism in South Africa. It's a symbol of taking land away from South Africans. It's a symbol of taking our resources away from the people of South Africa. And the day we begin to forget those sorts of things and talk about the exploitation of Black people in South Africa is the day we forget about history itself. We forget about the frontier wars. We forget about the repression. We forget about how people were kept in reserves that became Bantustans a little later. So, Ms. Denner, Honorable Denner, you also fail if you think I fail in your history lesson. Go and read your history books again, please, because history is something that you cannot deny, any one of us. To Honorable Swart, I want to say that the National Treasury will be informed about your suggestions around a rebate on diesel, although I'm not sure whether that will work. And Honorable Kwankwa, Honorable Nkonazi actually addressed some of your issues. But here are some facts. We are going to increase, Transnet will increase the volume of coal being exported from 40 million tons per annum to 63 million tons per annum during this financial year. As far as chrome and magnetite is concerned, it will increase from 9.6 million tons to 15.6 million tons during the course of this financial year by adding more than 150 wagons to the one instance and 160 wagons to the other. As far as iron ore is concerned, 51 million tons per year will be increased to 60 million tons per year, And once we get these locomotives moving from China, that will improve even further, Chairperson. As far as manganese is concerned, there are a whole lot of new points of departure, both within Nelson Mandela Bay, but also via East London and Saldanha. And there will be almost 1 million ton increase in the export of manganese itself. I don't have the time, but we can give you chapter and verse on the number of cases that have been referred to professional bodies, one from Denel, one from Eskom, 4 from SAA, and 1 from Transnet, in our quest to fight corruption, not just talk about it, through these entities. Delinquent directors, as far as the delinquency of directors is concerned, 73 former board members and executives are implicated in this, 10 from Denel, 13 from Eskom, 25 from SAA, and 25 from Transnet. I hope none of you are involved in that. As far as Eskom is concerned, contracts amounting to 14.7 billion rands were subject to state capture, and approximately 4.8 billion rands has been claimed against former contractors. And there are lots of numbers in that regard. If we take law enforcement agencies investigating 12 criminal cases in Transnet, 56 billion rands is affected by this. But in conclusion, Chairperson, if you allow me, because of the interruptions, the DPE and the ANC follow the philosophy of Nelson Mandela, who says, I am fundamentally an optimist. Whether that comes from nature or nurture, I cannot say. Part of being optimistic is keeping one's head pointed towards the sun, one's feet moving forward. There are many dark moments when my faith in humanity, like now, was sorely tested, but I would not and could not give myself up to despair. That way lays defeat and death. As the ANC, we will succeed in getting the SOEs right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Thank you, Honorable Minister. The honorable members, that concludes the debate and the business of this mini plenary session. The mini plenary will now rise.